because her question will not be in the documentary. So you answer the question kind of like she says, just incorporate the question into your answer.
Julie, give me a 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Give me it again.
1, 2, 3, 4.
That soft pink is working really well.
Yeah, love it.
Great, thank you for doing that. Okay, let's phones off, please.
Cameras A and B speeding.
We're speeding. Okay.
Down speed.
Stand by. Action.
Sex Nation, Julie Pickren, take 1.
Thank you. Hold. Okay, Julie. Our questions to you today are about children and CSE. So I want to start by asking you, can you tell us what's being taught in schools today in terms of CSE, and what age are these children that are being taught?
So in terms of CSE, for anybody that doesn't know, CSE is what is referred to as comprehensive sex ed. Comprehensive sex ed is not your traditional sex education that we've had in the past, where we just teach the biology of sex and, teaching children about procreation and what have you. This is a whole new way of teaching sexual education with comprehensive sex ed. And what comprehensive sex ed does is it teaches our children about all aspects of sex, about heterosexual sex, homosexual, bestiality, just a myriad of different. Can we start that over one more time?
You can do as many takes as you want.
Yeah, let's start that one over one more time,
Absolutely.
because that's not the direction I want to go in.
Yeah, when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay. Tell me the question one more time.
Sure. The question is, what is being taught in classrooms today in terms of CSE, and what age are the children being taught, starting at the youngest age?
Okay. So CSE in education today, that's a reference to what's called comprehensive sex education. Comprehensive sex education we have seen throughout the nation, where it's starting sex education as young as kindergarten for our children. We have curriculum that comes in now through the NSEA, National Sexuality Education Standards, that starts teaching our children as young as kindergarten and sometimes even pre-K about sex and sexual techniques and things like this, just things that children should never be exposed to. Right now, even in the state of Texas, we have a proposal right now before the Texas State Board of Education that will bring in comprehensive sex ed as young as 2nd grade. So to put that into context for people, that's 7-year-olds. And so exposing a child to sexual techniques and genders and all of this education through comprehensive sex ed, through CSE, it will harm our children. There is an incredible amount of data that shows that children exposed to sexual techniques and exposed to sex and exposed to this type of education really does a lot of mental harm to children. And so the idea that it would come from schools, and then on the other side of that, across the country, we have this massive teacher shortage right now. And God has given me the wonderful honor of talking with thousands of teachers across the country. And teachers, they don't want to teach this. Teachers, they do not want to talk to their little 6-year-old children about masturbation techniques, or little 8-year-olds about how to have homosexual sex and homosexual sex techniques. That's not what teachers want to do. Teachers, they're baseball moms, they're dads. They go to church on Sunday with these children that they're educating and teaching. They don't want to have these conversations with little children in the elementary schools or even the junior highs or high schools at this point. This is not something they want to do. So I think this is a huge contributor to why teachers are walking out of the industry right now.
Wow, so good. That was fantastic. Thank you. Okay, next question. You mentioned what teachers are saying and doing in regards to CSE. How about legislators? What have you seen legislators responding to CSE?
Well, that's an interesting question about the legislation portion of CSE. So CSE is relatively new in Texas. We've seen it in other parts of the country, Illinois, Chicago, New York, California. We've seen it in other parts of the country. But right now in Texas, it's individual school districts who are bringing in comprehensive sex ed to their children. Unfortunately, it's the largest school districts in Texas. So even though it may only be 7 or 8 school districts, it's still districts that are educating close to 1.5 million or 2 million children because they're the largest school districts in Texas. So here in Texas, we have about 5.8 million children in kindergarten through 12th grade. So you're talking at roughly between the top districts, the largest districts, about 20% of the children are being exposed to through to comprehensive sex ed. And the problem that we're having in the school districts with parents knowing about it is they put it under different classes. Okay, so in Texas, we have legislation that says that if you want your child to be taught sex education, that the parent has to sign a form to opt into the sex education. But whenever the form goes home to the parents, the form doesn't say, this is what we're going to be teaching your child. We're going to teach your child, masturbation techniques in the 3rd grade. In the 5th grade, we're going to teach your children homosexual sex techniques so that they can have homosexual sex properly. That, in 5th grade also, we're going to teach your children various heterosexual sex positions. So the curriculum is not what the parents are signing off on. The form that goes home to the parents, the form will say, we're going to do enhanced sex education, maybe in the health class, or maybe through social emotional learning, through, helping your child to develop good emotional habits. We're going to touch on a little bit of health, or maybe they'll even say sex education. So really at this point, the parents are not aware of what they are signing. Now, we have had parents who have requested from the school district the curriculum, but the districts aren't always very easy to work with. The districts tend to slow walk these requests, or they put up blockades as to why they cannot give the curriculum to the parents. So parents are really an uninformed consenter at this point when they are signing those forms for their children. And once they sign that form for their child, then the school can teach their children anything that they want as far as comprehensive sex ed goes. So right now, we need legislation. We need legislation in Texas to protect our children from comprehensive sex ed, and then also to provide full transparency for parents, so that parents know that when they're opting into a program, the school needs to provide the full syllabus or access to the full curriculum to the parent, so that the parent fully understands what they are going to be exposing their children to.
Julie, I want to tag on that question. You're going to keep looking at Rebecca for your answer, but
Okay.
Can you briefly explain the system? Meaning, we have a state board of education, and then we have independent superintendents, independent school district superintendents. And just talk a little bit about the amount of power that those superintendents have as to the curriculum taught in each district. Because I think parents in Texas think state school board controls it all. Just help us understand that landscape a little bit.
Okay, so we do have the Texas State Board of Education, and the Texas State Board of Education is who sets the curriculum standards and the TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the curriculum parameters for the schools. But the independent school districts are fully autonomous governing agencies. They are required to teach the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills, the standards that the State Board of Education outlines, but they can add to that. And so that's a big concern of mine, because in Texas law mandates that a child roughly be educated a little over 75,000 minutes a year of education. And as you know, because of COVID and because of other circumstances that's happened where children missed a lot of school, children are really behind right now in their reading and their math and their science proficiency. And so to me, from an education point of view, every minute that we spend on comprehensive sex ed is a minute that's taken away from a core subject. So just from an education standpoint, we really do not have time for this. We really need to focus on our core subjects, because our children are competing with children from all over the world. They're not just competing with children for Texas right now for college scholarships, for jobs. for their future. They're competing on a global stage right now. So we need to make sure that our children have an excellent education. And if we're going to provide an excellent education, we really need to stop comprehensive sex ed. It hurts children, it's a harm to them, and it takes crucial time away from core subjects.
So good.
I'm going off script here, sorry, but I gotta get this out of Julie. Julie, do you know, before you answer, tell me yes or no, but do you know kind of where we are in the literacy rate in Texas?
Yes.
Are we in a positive, before you answer, just think about this. Are we in a positive incline, decline, and kind of where we rank? I don't know if you know any of these rankings. I will pull them and I'll put them on screen, where we rank nationally, but just if you want to speak a little bit to the literacy rate.
So the literacy rate in Texas had a dramatic decline during COVID. All of the literacy gains that we had over the last 10 years have been completely wiped out. So in some school districts in Texas, again, and many of our larger urban districts, the literacy rate in third grade is sitting less than 50%. It's sitting around 40%, 45%. And why that number is so important, why we measure that in the third grade, is because third grade literacy rates have a direct tie to graduation. And so that's why we monitor that so much, because how well a child reads and comprehends at the third grade level has a direct tie to their entire education career. And at the third grade, you have a little bit of time to correct it, to bring in instructional coaching and bring in supports to correct it, but you do not have a lot of time. I mean, it needs to be fixed very quickly. So that's another reason why we just do not have time for comprehensive sex ed.
Sorry, I'm really just on a roll here. On the time issue, when a child is pre-exposed to sex, sex now consumes the brain. And when there's exploitation, it's not just time away from class, but now it's time invested into healing this child.
Mm-hmm.
As a mom, speaking from the point of as a mother, just as a mother, why is it important for you as a mother that the brain and the energy your child expends per day is to things that are productive and constructive for their health? Just speak a little bit about what we feed children mentally as a mother, not even as an educator.
Okay, so speaking as a mom, so a lot of our schools, especially our rural schools, these are generational schools. These are schools that, our grandparents went to, our parents went to, we went to. So there's a level of trust, especially, like I said, when you get out into your rural communities. The churches and the schools are really the heart of the community. So there's a whole level of trust there that as a mom and as a dad that we have in our educators. And so whenever we're dropping our kids off for school or putting our children on the school bus in the morning, there's a whole level of trust that we have in the education system, in the school, in the teachers and the administrators, that they're not going to harm our children, that they are going to educate our children so that our children have a chance to live the American dream, so that they have the opportunity to live the American dream. But what's happening is that is not happening in school districts that have adopted comprehensive sex ed. Unfortunately, the parents are dropping their kids off at school. The parents are putting their children on the school bus, and their child, their little girl or their little boy, is being exposed to sex at a young age. And it's not just exposed to, the birds and the bees, how we used to say, right? It's not that. It is full pornographic material. It is full pornographic material in their libraries. It is full pornographic material in their classroom libraries. It is full pornographic material in their curriculum. And so things like, as a mom, I've taken my children to movies and the movie didn't go the way I thought it should go. So we get up and we walk out. That's how I protect my children. But unfortunately, sandwiched in between a lot of little kids' classrooms today, sandwiched in between social studies and, coloring, is a sex education, or it's a library book that has, as young as first and second grade, a library book where it's one little boy giving another little boy a blowjob. So this is what's in our schools. This is what is in our elementary schools. And I honestly, I don't know a mom or a dad anywhere that would be comfortable reading a book like what's in our libraries and what's in some of our curriculum at night to their children before they go to bed.
Julie, when we talk to people like Rand Paul and libertarians, and they talk about abolish the public education system, and we hear that all the time, right? How do we fix a broken education system? And I know it's a super big question, but just where do we start?
Well, I think that we have,
Sorry, would you hold for me just one
nope,
second?
not at all. As long as he promises to ask me that question again,
Yeah.
because I'll forget it.
How do we fix education?
Okay.
So people like Rand Paul, the libertarians, would go abolish the public education system completely. Let's go back to the farm schoolhouse, homeschool, we homeschool. But to do that unilaterally across the country, some of these kids, the only meal they get is at school.
That's right.
So how do we realistically, because that's the libertarians always throw stuff out that there's no tangible way to do with it. They just say it, right? How do we actually go about chipping away and fixing the public education system?
Well, we have a great opportunity to really fix the public education system. And I've served for a lot of years serving teachers. I love serving teachers. I love serving children in public education. Public education done well is a really fantastic program for a lot of children that would never have an opportunity to a great education. But unfortunately, we have this wickedness that's creeping into our public education system that will not serve children well. So really the two main things from where I sit, the two main things that I see that we can do to fix public education is, number one, we need a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying in education. The people that lobby for this pornographic materials in our schools, the people that lobby for comprehensive sex ed, these lobbyists, they're paid for with our tax dollars. And they hire the best people to lobby for them. When you're in Austin or you're in DC or you're in your state, you're at your state capital, these are very high dollar, powerful lobbyists. They're advocating for this because they can afford it, because they have the resources of our tax dollars. They have the resources of our tax dollars through the through NSBA, the National School Board Association, through your state association. There's a lot of state associations that are actually promoting comprehensive sex ed, and they hire really great lobbyists, and they are using our tax dollars to lobby for this against our children. So that's the main thing, is we need a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying. They cannot use our tax dollars anymore to lobby for this curriculum and for these library books that will harm our children. The other thing that we can do is we can end the obscenity exemption in education. So let me give you an idea what the obscenity exemption does. If you have a school district employee that is reading one of these books to your children, and this is not the way that I normally talk, so I'm sure there's websites you can go to see what books I'm talking about. Personally, I'm just not comfortable using this type of language. This is the type of language that's in these library books is not what I use in my life. They're not what I use in my family. So I don't feel comfortable saying these words and speaking how they speak, okay? So, but there are plenty of websites and lists you can go to see what books I'm talking about. But what happens is a school district employee can read one of these books to your children at 2:15 in the afternoon inside the school, and it's completely protected by law. If that school district employee took that same book and at 4 p.m. in the afternoon after school is over and went out to the sidewalk and read that book to your child, that person would be arrested for pornographic material with a minor. So this is the huge divide that we're seeing with this protection. This obscenity protection is actually protecting people, exposing our children to pornography and pornographic material in our schoolhouses that they would be arrested for by the end of the day if they did it outside of the schoolhouse.
Great, Julie. Thanks for touching on that 1970 bill. Can you, away from sex ed, can you just touch a little bit on how public school system is funded, particularly through our offshore oil and gas efforts in Texas, but just from a funding perspective? You just touched on taxpayer funded. People learn that, wait, you use my money to lobby against me? Yes, they do. So just how is the school system funded? I know you can talk about Texas.
I can, for me, I love the great state of Texas. That's home for me. So I could talk about this from a Texas perspective. So what happens in my home state is whenever you pay your property taxes, your property taxes are going to your local school district. That's what's funding your public education system. But then what happens is your school boards, they pay these agencies, these associations, Texas Association of School Boards, National School Board Association, they pay them to provide training, to provide different services for the school district, but part of that payment is for lobbying. And so what happens is these taxpayer-funded associations are then lobbying for this. They're lobbying for critical race theory. They're lobbying for comprehensive sex ed. And what we've seen right now is right now before the State Board of, you know what, Yaku, let's redo that. I didn't answer your question.
No, you do.
And I go away because I really want to touch on the SBOE, what's happening in SBOE right now.
Yes, you do.
So ask me after this, ask me what's happening in SBOE right
I
now.
will.
Okay, so let me get back to the funding. Ask me the question one more time on funding.
So taxpayer funds, you go back to property tax because people don't know the reason there's bad schooling in a low property tax area is because the kid is stuck, right? So property
Right.
tax for school funding, touch on the fund from oil and gas,
Okay.
and then bring it all home to lobbying.
Okay. So in Texas, there's two ways that public education is funded. The first way is through our oil and gas leases. So actually oil and gas leases in the state of Texas, all the way to 9 miles out from the coastline into the Gulf of Mexico, that pays for what's called the Permanent School Fund. And the Permanent School Fund, also referred to as the textbook fund, is what pays for a lot of curriculum in schools and a lot of our education. The other way that Texas schools are funded is through property taxes. So for anyone living in the state of Texas, your largest property tax person is your local school district. And so what happens is your local school district, part of their budget, which is 100% taxpayer funded, okay, at the local level, they join these associations. They join different associations, they buy curriculum, and the people that they are paying, these associations that they're paying, and the people they're buying curriculum from are huge proponents of comprehensive sex ed. And so these associations, they are the ones who are hiring these lobbyists, or maybe they employ the lobbyists that are in Austin, that are in your state capital, that are in DC, actually advocating for comprehensive sex ed and critical race theory to be brought into our schools. So it's our money, it's our dollars. It's when you go to work every day and you are earning the living for your children, it is your money that when you pay your taxes every year, it is your money that is funding this.
Okay, let's pause there for a second. Back up.
I don't have phantom power, unfortunately. I only have batteries, and these are not charged enough to.
Okay, that's fine. Just charge some.
I have 6 charging.
Okay, when they're ready, we switch them out because we're not going to cut to that. Okay, let's go back to SBOE.
Okay. So currently right now, I was just in a Texas State Board of Education meeting on Monday. And what's happening right now in Texas, they are proposing a full rewrite of history, civics, and social studies. Now y'all would say, okay, Julie, what does that have to do with comprehensive sex ed? Okay, let me tell you what's happening right now in the great state of Texas, which leads this whole country in education. What's happening with us right now is a term called intersectionality. And what they're doing is they have linked the LGBTQ plus, okay? They have linked that with the civil rights movement. So, for example, in the 2nd grade, whenever we're going to teach the civil rights movement to children, which absolutely our children should know about the civil rights movement. Absolutely, we should educate children about the struggles of minorities and what they have overcome by the grace of God, what they have overcome to be full, equal citizens in America. But what they're doing is what's called intersectionality, and they're bringing the LGBT movement in with the civil rights movement. And so what is being proposed right now is that in a 2nd grade social studies class, your children will be taught about the LGBT movement, about all the different genders and how to pick what gender they want to be. So now we've left a comprehensive sex ed program, and now the proposal is actually to bring comprehensive sex ed into social studies, civics, history. So, and if the state of Texas mandates that, if our State Board of Education moves forward and approves this curriculum for kindergarten through 12th grade, then we will have comprehensive sex ed mandated by the state of Texas for every child, for 5.8 million children throughout the state of Texas, completely through intersectionality.
Julie, on that, I want people to understand the significance of this, evil woman. On that, can you talk about how Texas is the clearinghouse for the whole country's curriculum or textbooks?
Yes, so Texas, in the great state of Texas, we have 5.8 million children in kindergarten through 12th grade. And so what that means is whenever we set curriculum standards, once we set the standards, then the publishers come along and they write the textbooks to the standards that we set. But because Texas has the most kindergarten through 12th grade children in the country, the publishers are writing for our state. So the curriculum that we set, the standards that we set, influence the textbooks. And then the textbooks that we pick, that's what's printed for the nation. And so really what happens at the Texas State Board of Education really affects almost every child in America.
Continue on that. If we use it for good, we can change this nation. If Texas State Board then approves good, healthy curriculum, it is a method through which we can actually protect children in Illinois, in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin, in New York.
Oh, absolutely, Yaku. This is a lot of power that God has given to the great state of Texas, because our chance for influence for good is amazing. We actually can raise, if we set the standards correctly, and then the publishers write the textbooks that go with the standards that are correct, we can actually raise the level of education throughout the nation. You know, a problem that I see right now is that we're setting our standards too low. Right now, we need to raise our standards. We need to provide an excellent education for children, because I don't care if a child lives in the urban part of Houston, in downtown Houston, or down in the valley, or on a ranch in West Texas. Every child has the capacity to learn. Every child needs to be challenged and needs excellent standards. So if we will raise our standards, if we'll leave garbage like comprehensive sex ed out, if we'll leave garbage like critical race theory out, if we'll leave this garbage out, that gives us time to really educate children correctly and to really advance them and to really raise the standards in education and really educate our children to where, like I said, they can compete on a global stage. Because what happens right now, for instance, I live in the Houston area. So when a child graduates from one of our school districts, you know, we have the energy corridor in the Houston area, right? We have the Texas Medical Center, which is the finest medical center in the world. We have the energy corridor, which is the hub for all energy and gas throughout the world, okay? So these corporations, they have what's called H-1B visas, and a stack of them. And the stacks of H-1B visas say that they can hire anybody anywhere from the world to fill these careers, to fill these positions. So when our children are going for these jobs, once we've educated them and they're joining the workforce, they literally are competing against the whole world. And we need to make sure that that our children are the best and our children are the brightest, because you cannot tell me, there is not a person that can tell me that children cannot learn. It doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're in urban downtown Houston, if you're in San Antonio, Texas, if you're sitting on a ranch out in Midland, if you live down in the valley, or you live here in the middle of Dallas. It does not matter. All children can learn. All children deserve a great education so they can live the American dream, so that they can have opportunities in life. Every child. And let me pull that on into another thing. These minutes that we're spending on comprehensive sex ed is also time that we're taking away from children with special needs, from autistic children, from children with learning disabilities. The children can learn. When I tell y'all all children can learn, all children can learn, but we need the time to focus on the main thing. We need the time to focus on math, science, reading, history taught correctly, civics taught correctly. Our children in Texas, within the next 8 to 10 years, this is our voting population. This is who will be voting 2 presidential cycles from now. So you want your children to be educated correctly in civics and in history and in social studies. You want them to understand the exceptionalism of America. You want your daughters to understand that it is an honor to be born in America. For me, I would say it's really an honor to be born in Texas. I love my state of Texas. But we must teach American exceptionalism. We must teach Texas exceptionalism. We must teach all the greatness of our country. And has our country and our state, have we been through trials and tribulations? Absolutely, 100%. But with God's good grace, great people prevailed. And that is why we live in an exceptional country and in an exceptional state. And that's what we need to teach our children, not the garbage of comprehensive sex ed, not to teach little 7 and 8-year-olds how to have, different types of sex techniques. There's only so much time to educate our child. Let the garbage go and let's create an excellent education system.
I have no script question.
Yaku Patriot Mobile interview in 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll sneak out.
Okay.
You go.
All right, Julie, my next question for you. You mentioned competing on the global stage. You mentioned our children, the future of our children. They deserve it individually and they can learn. But the future of our nation, if education continues in this direction, not only can they not get the jobs they deserve, not only will they vote in a way that's going to destroy the foundation of our nation, but where does that put America in the next generation? Can you
Julie,
speak?
hold before you answer.
Yeah.
I'm gonna run out. No disrespect. Keep going. You're doing phenomenal.
I only have one question for you after that.
I just need my phone.
Okay.
Next to your chair. Next to your chair.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Sorry.
Okay,
Julie,
bye, Yaku.
Love you.
Tammy, you going with me?
Please take a picture with
I'll be
Julie in
back.
front of the set.
Yep.
Thank you, Dan. All right, let's hold for just one more minute. Is the question making sense?
Yes. Say it one more time, though.
Yeah, just the future of our nation, if education continues in this direction, not just for the sake of our children, but for the sake of America in the next generation.
So if education continues in this direction, if we continue down this path of dividing children, of dividing kids in the classroom, of having our children focus on what gender they want to be, who they want to have sex with, right? These are conversations that belong in the home with the parents. These are not conversations that belong in the classroom. And if we continue down this path of taking away valuable classroom time to address these issues that never belong in the classroom, then we're going to suffer because our children will not be the most educated population. We have to have excellence in education. And if we take time away from core subjects in our classrooms to adjust to, oh, I messed that one up.
That's okay.
Okay. If we take time away from what we should be educating our children on, math, science, social studies, if we take time away from these, or if we dilute social studies and civics down by adding comprehensive sex ed to it, then we are doing a huge disservice for our children because they won't know what it means to be an American. They won't know what it means to be a Texan and the pride in that and the love of our country and the love of our state. And they won't have an excellent education because, again, you only have so much time during the day to educate children. And so if you take that time away from your core subjects, then what you're doing is you're really dumbing down your population.
Yeah, you can just step out or sit. You're okay. Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much. I'm going to have you bring it home just to make sure that I have that last segment crystal clear.
Okay.
If you could speak to how specifically our nation falls behind once our children are not educated. Does that make sense compared to other nations that are educating their children well?
Yes. Okay. So in our nation, if we do not raise our standards, if we as a nation and if we as a state, we do not believe, if it's not at our core beliefs that every child can learn and that every child deserves a great education, then what's going to happen is the standards are going to drop. The standards are going to fall. And if we bring in comprehensive sex ed into our classrooms and we take valuable classroom time away from core subjects to address this garbage for children, then that is time that we are not learning engineering, physics, algebra, history, English language arts, social studies, civics, children that want to pursue a career in government. We are robbing a great education from our children if we bring in all of these other social issues into the classroom. Education needs to keep the main thing, and that is educating children so they can live the American dream. Article 7 of the Texas Constitution says the whole purpose of a free and public education is to preserve our liberties and our freedoms. If our education system is not doing that, then we are not fulfilling the Texas Constitution.
If you just start from that, you're okay. If you just start
Okay.
from that sentence, if our education system is not fulfilling that.
Okay. If our education system is not fulfilling what the Texas Constitution says, then we are failing our children. We have to educate our children with excellence. We have to educate our children with pride in our country, with pride in our state, so that we can preserve our liberties and our freedoms. Our children need to know. Our children need to know what an honor it is and what a privilege it is, and how it's God's blessing to have an education in the great state of Texas and to have an education in America.
Thank you, Julie. That's wonderful. My last question for you, as a mom, what is your best piece of advice to parents?
Okay, as a mom, I have 2 wonderful little boys. So as a mom, my advice to parents is ask questions. Show up and speak up. Show up to your school board meetings. And I know this is a little intimidating because we had Viola Garcia, the president of the National School Board Association, meet with the White House about 1.5 years ago to ask for the Patriot Act to be used against parents who show up to school board meetings. So I know this can be a little intimidating, but I'm telling you, our children are worth it. Our children are worth showing up. Our children are worth speaking up. So parents, go to your school board meetings, ask the questions, ask what library books are in your children's classroom, ask what library books are in your children's libraries, ask what curriculum's being used, ask if what is fully entailed in sex education. When you see those forms come home, our children are about to start school here in about 2 weeks in Texas. So when that form comes home in your child's notebook, because I know there's going to be about 40, 50 forms for you to look at and sign, right, for our children, pay attention to the form that talks about sex education, and is it okay to opt your child into sex education? Now, it may not say sex education, so pay attention to your forms. It may say something about an extended health class, or it may say something about an enhanced social emotional learning program. So really pay attention to what you're signing. And if you're not sure, ask your school board members. You elected your school board members. They are serving you. They are your elected official. So ask your school board members, what exactly is this? What am I signing? What are you teaching my child? What is my child being exposed to? When I drop them off in the morning and I pick them up in the afternoon, parents' rights do not end. I know we've had a lot of people saying that from President Biden on down. We've had a lot of people saying that parents' rights end at the schoolhouse doors. I'm here to tell you, your rights do not end. You are always that child's parent, and you are always their biggest advocate and protector. So ask as many questions as you need. And there's a lot of great Mama Bear and Papa Bear groups around the country now that have formed. You know, we've seen a lot of great grassroots groups organize about this issue and about critical race theory. So I would even encourage you to go and join one of those groups. They're doing great jobs with bringing light to this, with shining the light on this, and they're doing a great job about talking with school board members and superintendents. So just be your child's advocate. That's your child, and that's always your child. And parents always know what's best for their children.
That's so wonderful. Okay, we're about to wrap this up. Is there anything else that you just want to share with us from your heart?
Yes, from my heart. You know, this is a real battle. You know, when I talk about what's happening in our school districts, when I talk about the National Sexuality Education Standards, NSES, in our schools, which, you know, Planned Parenthood had a hand in writing, some other groups had a hand in writing these standards. So when I just ask parents, pray for your children, pray for Texas, pray for America, and pray for our leaders. You know, this isn't always an easy battle to go through. So what I'm just asking for, and I'm going to join with you, I'm going to join my faith with you, and we're going to pray. Because just like David had to slay Goliath, this is a giant in our time. This is a giant that's coming after our children. Sexualizing children is never the correct path. In Psalm 127, when the Bible says that children are a gift from God and they are a blessing to their family, Psalm 127, the Lord was not talking to government. The Lord was talking to families. So children are a blessing to your family. Children are a blessing to us, to parents. And so we have to keep them covered in prayer, and we have to pray for our leaders that God give them wisdom on how to navigate through this. And we have to pray that our leaders will have courage to stand up and say no. Not children in Texas, not children in America. This is not happening with our children. These children, they are our future, and we have to make sure that they have an excellent education, that they are not educated on how to be sexual beings.